Hope everybody enjoyed their morning. Looks like we're holding pretty steady at 21 people. Kaylee, are you ready?
Yep, should be ready.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Kaylee Weicker, and I'm a section coordinator for Region 3. And I am joined today by my co-presenter, also Kaylee. I'll let her introduce.
Yep. I'm Kaylee Jerome. So you can refer to us, I don't know, Kaylee with a Y, Kaylee with an E. And I am a new section coordinator for Region 6.
So we are going to be presenting Selection 101, which is a very high level overview of what selection is, kind of behind the scenes, give you some tips and tricks on what you should be thinking about now and what can wait till later. And then at the end, we would love to have some conversation and some question time. If you have questions about your chapter specifically or selection as a whole, you can be thinking of them now, or if something comes up during the presentation, we are happy to answer those questions.
Okay, so this is just a very basic, bare bones outline of what selection kind of looks like. You're gonna want to start planning early. So if your selection is in the spring, you'll want to start right away. Then you're going to want to put that plan into action, start promoting your organization, recruiting. Once you get the word out there, you're going to start collecting applications, giving out nominations, and then from those applications, you will select the members that you want to admit. You want to let them know that you have selected them by tapping them. And then you get to do all these fun forms from the national office.
Yeah, the forms are available on the mortar board website under resources. They're fairly easy to fill out. The first tab of the Excel spreadsheet actually has instructions on how exactly to fill it out. And the same form gets submitted both times. So it's pretty easy to do. Moving into starting the process, as Kaylee said, that first part of the process is planning. You want to start early and be as thorough as possible. Get your dates set out as early as possible. Make sure you take a look at your university calendar and make sure that you're not on top of, 6 other events and 4 sporting events and things like that. You're never going to avoid everything, but try to avoid as much as possible. And start thinking about that eligibility list that you're going to request from the registrar. This is a place where you can utilize your advisor because the registrar is more likely to give the list of eligible students to a campus faculty or staff member than they are to give them to a student due to FERPA regulations. So advisors who typically already have a relationship with the registrar's office are a great resource for getting that eligibility list for recruitment, whether you're doing a fall or a spring selection. I had an advisor in our chat this morning talking about booking rooms 6 months ahead of time. You may not think it's a good idea. It is. Spaces fill up fast, and you want to make sure that you have plenty of room to do your initiation ceremony, have your selection meeting, and things like that. So book those spaces and rooms as soon as possible and make sure that you're doing that. There is a little bit of a difference between a fall selection and a spring selection. Fall selections are typically condensed. It takes a lot less time than a spring selection does. So if you're going to do a fall selection, say you have a small chapter right now and you want to beef up the number of members, or you feel that some people that would be great mortar board members weren't selected in the spring, let your section coordinators know, and we can help you walk through that process. The second part of that is going to be that thing. Make sure that potential members, even as young as freshmen, because they remember those things, know the benefits of membership, both as in the national organization and within campus. So if you have board does special that makes being a member a really big, make sure you put that out there for them to see. Have events. Bring up membership at that event, let them know when the applications will be available or when that process will be started. And like I said, everyone can be promoted to, even freshmen. I know that I first heard about mortarboard as a freshman in college, and I remembered that my junior year when the applications came out, and that's why I applied.
Okay, so from there, you started to do your events, you've gotten the word out, and then you will want to start collecting applications. So you'll want to make this process as easy as possible. Do not overcomplicate it for people because that's just going to scare them away. You're going to want to reach out to faculty and administration to get help from that. We kind of already talked about it, but getting lists from registrars, that's what my school did. That's how I found out about it, is I just got an email from the mortar board advisor because I met the qualifications for it. And so I just signed up from there. So that can be extremely helpful. Know what you need to get from applicants, such as their email address, their GPA, maybe some essay questions. So like, why do you want to be a part of mortarboard would be a very basic one. I'm trying to think what was on my applications when I was the VP of membership. How do you exemplify the 3 pillars of mortarboard? Scholarship, leadership, and service might be one. Or what would you like to see from our organization is another good one. It gives a lot of great ideas. So if you want to throw those kind of things in there, and then also basic demographic information is very helpful. And then we would recommend using an online format. Back when I applied, even I think 3-4 years ago now, we actually got emailed a paper thing. I had to download it, print it, write it, and then I just scan it and send it in. And that probably scared a lot of people away, having to do all of that work. So then when I became the VP of membership, I was like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. Threw that out the window, and I put everything on Google Forms. And it's just a much simpler process. You can also use JotForm or any other, I don't know if there's another platform out there. I just use Google Forms. It's easy, and then it puts everything, all of the information you could need. It's all organized for you, so then the selection process is also much easier.
Yeah. And another thing to know, I know some chapters still do nominations from faculty and staff. So that's another reason to reach out to faculty and staff throughout the year, as well as during selection time. If they have students that they've mentored or had in class that they think would be great members, they can also be nominated for mortar boards. So that's another way to get those possible members for your chapter. Now, after you get all that information from people, that is when you select them. So selection, some campuses do. I know Purdue recently had, for their selection meeting this spring, they met for 11 hours. They're very, very detail oriented, and they go through a lot of intense application review for their selection process. Some selection meetings are only a couple of hours. But you should have most, if not all, of your chapter there to select the next chapter of mortarboard, if at all possible. So another reason to get those dates on calendars as soon as possible. Before you run the selection meeting, make sure you at least review, if not read thoroughly, the membership handbook, which is on the mortarboard website. It lays it all out for you. Our preferred selection method is by consensus. So it lays it out step by step for you. If you have questions on how to run a selection meeting, your SCs and your advisors are available to help you plan out how that selection meeting can go. As an executive board or a membership committee, make sure that you're working together. It's always easier if there's more than one person working on the process. And it can take some time, and it should, because selection in mortarboard is a really big deal. Now, once you've selected those members and sent your form into the national office, you want to let them know that you have selected them to be a member. And we do that in mortarboard by tapping. Now, most of you should have been tapped somehow by the members in your chapter, whether they came to a class and read a biography of you in front of your classmates and your professor and told you that you were selected for mortarboard, or came to a club or an organization meeting that you're a part of, or invited you to a public place on campus as a group and then tapped all of you in front of everyone that was around at that time. A lot of different chapters tap in different and unique ways. If your chapter doesn't currently have a tapping method that is very public, or you don't know what it is at all, your alumni are a great resource for this. They can let you know how they've done tapping in the past, what they've done, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and can give you ideas of how to do that. I know since COVID, a lot of chapters have moved to emailing or sending out video tappings, and that's absolutely fine. If that's what works for your chapter and that gets members, that's great. And if it's not working, you can always change that. It doesn't have to be the same from year to year. It can be adapted to be what you need for your chapter at the time. And this is a great option for visibility for future members. If you're tapping in a public place and it's somewhere where the campus is very busy at that time of day, that's another way to get visibility on campus and have people go, oh, that's that mortarboard group. They be members right in front of me. So yet another way to get visible on campus. Anything to add, Kaylee?
Yeah, so I'll just add, so when I was selected, we were kind of transitioning out of tapping in classrooms. That's what we used to do, is we would go to their classrooms. But we transitioned out of that because of just so many people taking online classes now. So when I was tapped, we actually, what they did was we did interviews, and then they emailed us and said, we would like to invite you to a second round of interviews. But the second round of interviews was actually like a surprise little party, I guess, where they all tapped us and said, congratulations, you were selected to be in it. So it was still fun, and we, it was like a fun little social to get to know everyone. And, you know, no one was expecting it. I feel like that really only works 1 year, because then everyone knows about it after that. But if you're struggling to come up with an idea for tapping, that's the one we did. And then with COVID, we kind of just moved to emails. But hopefully in the future we can move back, because it gets people excited about mortarboard, and it's a big deal when you're selected. So that's all I had to add. Okay. So after you've done all this, or actually kind of during the selection process, there are a few forms that need to be worked on and then sent to the national office. So there is the candidate request form. So you submit this to the national office after you have done your selections meeting. You have selected who you want, but before you tap them. So you need to set that in. It needs to be approved by the national office before you tap, before you perform your tapping. So if you can, I always did it just like immediately the same night as the selections, just send it in. It's a long day, especially if you're a bigger school that does selections for a long time, but then it's out of the way. You don't have to wait as long to tap members, because members don't want to wait that long to find out if they made it in also. And I believe on the candidate request form, it also asks you the date of initiation. So when you're going to initiate them. So make sure you have that planned out, because it also needs to be a certain length of time. It needs to be approved a certain length of time before the initiation as well. And then after initiation, you submit the official membership report. It can be found in the same file as the candidate request form. So I don't know if we can find the link for it, but if you go to the mortarboard website, it's under files selection. When I did it every year, I never had it saved. I had to find it every single time, and it was never difficult to find. So, yeah.
I put the link in the chat directly to the form.
Perfect. I believe that is the last slide of our
Yes.
little PowerPoint.
Yes, so we are happy to entertain any questions that you have about your chapter specifically or about selection as a whole, anything that you came up with during the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to come off mute or raise your hand or put it in the chat box, and Kaylee and I will do our best to answer them.
Hi,
Hi, Tamika.
hello. I was just gonna make mention, I know when we were doing our selections last year, we were also kind of focusing on like the diversity, equity, and inclusion portion. And so it kind of allowed us to kind of step back and also consider that individuals from certain marginalized communities sometimes have a lot of different responsibilities, such as they may be caring for parents or other children or sick individuals, or they may be caregivers. And so we started considering that sometimes, you know, it would be best to also kind of look at where they are in their lives and kind of what they're doing. They may not have had the opportunity to get a lot of leadership roles because they have so many responsibilities in the home, but they are still just as dedicated to making a change and wanting to serve an organization like Mortarboard. So what we did is that we did definitely focus on the GPA, but we also started to kind of review, you know, exactly what their day-to-day lives were. In our little membership form, there's a section where they can kind of fill out what they do and what their lives are kind of like. And we did notice that sometimes their GPA might not be like absolutely spot on, or they may have few leadership roles, but they care for so many other things, or they're working multiple jobs. So it's not that they don't have true dedication and whatnot. So I highly recommend always kind of looking outside of the direct parameters sometimes, just to see, you know, if there's a way to kind of be a little bit more expansive and who gets accepted and the opportunities we provide to others who might not have had the time available to volunteer like they would have in the past to gain that leadership experience. And a lot of time Mortarboard can be their first foray into leadership.
That is a great opportunity for diversity, Tamika. I love that.
Yeah,
Todd,
I would.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Can I was going to say that's a very excellent point. We also kind of tried to, in my chapter, focus on that when you're recruiting as well. So instead of just sending out like the GPA forms, and I also noticed that we had a lot of like pre-med students. So we went to other buildings. Like our school is very big on aviation, and there's like a huge diverse population of aviation. People come from all over the country for that. So we kind of went to those buildings and tried to just find a more diverse group instead of just targeting like the pre-med students every single time. So you can also focus on it when you're recruiting.
Tosh, I think your hand went up next.
Thanks. I was just wondering because I love the prospect of, having an individual and kind of celebrating like, hey, you've made it in, but how do you balance that desire for publicity and kind of making sure that everybody sees this while also not then saying, oh, if somebody say applied but actually wasn't able to make it in, but they're still in like the same room, how do you kind of balance that aspect, celebrating individuals' achievements without necessarily denigrating others' failures? Because of course there are certain things that are out of their control if they were unable to make it, and don't want to emphasize that they are like a bad student or something like that.
I mean, I guess the public tapping would be the main way that would happen. I think that's why the in-person, class or club tappings kind of started happening, because then they could kind of call out one student specifically. Unfortunately, I know on a lot of Mortarboard at a lot of the chapters, Mortarboard is very exclusive, and it is hard to get into. And so sending out, a follow-up email to those that weren't selected may be helpful. Just saying, we appreciate all of your experience and you're wonderful, contributions to the campus or the community at large. And we hope that, best luck with all your future endeavors, just to make sure that they're still feeling appreciated, even though they may not have gotten selected to be in mortar board.
Right, and I would almost, I mean, it depends on the school, and kind of the nature of your chapter, but at least for the school that I was with, I feel like if we were going to be doing a public tapping or tapping in a class or something, I would make sure earlier that day that I had already let the people know who didn't make it in beforehand, so they aren't like anticipating it and they see people there and then that disappointment is very public. They can kind of be let down on their own terms ahead of time. That might be helpful.
Alana, sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
No, that's okay. It's Alana, but I promise I've heard like everything, so no worries. So my question is, our chapter allows for personal application and for faculty nomination. Is there a need to have 2 forms for that, since you are getting different information? Like what a faculty advisor would say is not the same thing that I would say about myself. Would you recommend having 2 forms for that so you can kind of differentiate the information you're getting?
Yeah, I know a lot of campuses do nominations and applications, and the 2 forms are completely different. Also, some chapters do a nomination form before they do applications and then send application forms specifically to those who were nominated, letting them know that a faculty member had nominated them for mortar board, and then get that information from them, because a lot of times the faculty or staff member won't know their home address or information like that or have access to it. So being able to get that from them, because you have to put it on the candidate request form and the official membership form, that's another way to kind of balance those 2 types of information getting opportunities.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Kinsey, I think you have your hand up too.
Hi, I am the current chapter president for Purdue, and one of the missions that I've been talking to my cabinet about is really catering to the underclassmen. But mortarboard has kind of lost its prestige on campus, so I was wondering how you guys would recommend keeping underclassmen engaged for the duration of time that they're on campus before they're eligible to apply for mortarboard.
That is a great question, Kinsey. I know when I was a student, granted, that was a few years ago at this point, mortarboard did events on campus that they invited the entire campus community to. It wasn't just specific mortarboard chapter events that they attended. So that's kind of how mortarboard at Ohio Northern stayed relevant and in the forefront of people's minds. They also collaborated with other organizations on campus. So if there was something that kind of aligned with mortarboard's purpose, then we would, either offer to, have members volunteer to help out at that event or financially help them if we could as a chapter. So that's one way to kind of keep the campus community at large with mortarboard in the forefront of their minds, as well as I know a lot of chapters attend organization fairs and do things like that, so they're constantly being visible on campus.
Thank you.
Welcome. Lyda, I think we have time for one more question. The next session does start at 12:30. I wanted to let you all know. Ben Flox is going to put up a slide with, I think, the information for the next section of ops sessions here. So you guys can kind of start taking a look at that and know where you're going. But Lyda, if you want to ask your question, we can get that in before we're done.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there is a place for all these ideas, like a form for the students and then for the advisor that goes out to the faculty. Is there a place online on the website that people could just put these forms in, so it'll be easier for us to oh, I need some ideas on how to get this letter going, because everybody's so busy, all the students are so busy. So it'd be so nice, I believe, if we were to have something like that. Do we have something like that?
There is a resources page on the mortarboard website right now. I know that is one of the goals this year, is to build that out so that there are more resources available to chapters, such as nomination and application form kind of
Mhm.
templates, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you're doing selection. So that is one of the goals for this year, is to build out that resources section. And as soon as it's available, I'm sure that the national office, as well as your section coordinators, will be sending you emails about that.
Thank you, because I had not seen that. So I mean, this particular resource, so appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you everybody for attending our session. I hope you enjoy your next one and have a great rest of conference.
Yes, thank you for all the great questions.
Thank you.